for law enforcement. We stand for a secure border, and we stand for a safe Iowa and a safe America. But it says a little something, doesn't it? That the left is more concerned about protecting illegal and violent Tren de Aragua gang members who are not even allowed to be in our country, who are here illegally, than they do the rights of Americans. That, I think, showed us just what we're up against. You know, they're more concerned also about the rights of terrorists than they are about the rights of Americans. And that tells us all we need to know. And let me tell you, that's been an issue that's been on my mind a lot lately. Because like you, I think all of us studied the Holocaust in school. I think we all remember that. And I think many of us were kids when we studied that, and it was hard to understand how something like that could happen in the world that we live in. And I remember thinking, how could something like that happen, and thinking it could never happen again. Now with what I see around the world on October 7th and in our own country, I'm not so sure. But I know we must combat anti-Semitism everywhere we find it. We need to deport terrorists and their sympathizers who are here on student visas with our permission. They don't have permission to be here if they're a terrorist. And we stand with Israel, don't we? We stand with Israel against the brutal terrorists. Your country needs you to stand up for that right now. We're blessed here in Iowa, but around the country, there's anti-Semitism rearing its ugly, ugly head. I am so thankful, though, for President Trump, and I was so glad to endorse him in the caucuses. It was my privilege. I wasn't glad to get to do it, I'll tell you that, because it never should have happened, but it was my privilege to get to be there to support him when he went through that awful trial in New York. And that showed me and the whole world he's a strong man, and he knows what America is all about. He is going to fight for what is right, and that is exactly what he has done, and I'm so proud of what he's done at the Department of Justice to help drain that swamp there and make sure that we are focused on what the Department of Justice is supposed to do. Go after the cartels, go after the drug dealers, the human traffickers, and don't weaponize the justice system against innocent people. Glad to stand with President Trump. And I just love it that now we have a president who makes sure that Washington works for us rather than the other way around. It was about time that happened. And, you know, people talk about the first 100 days. What about the first 100 hours? Maybe the first 100 minutes, right? I mean, we have President Trump. He loves our country. He loves our Constitution. And let me tell you this, I think about this every time I go to the White House for a meeting to work on an issue or for an executive order signing. I carry you with me in my heart. And I tell President Trump and all of his staff, Iowa stands with you. The real part of America outside the Washington, D.C. Beltway absolutely appreciates you, President Trump, and what you are doing for our country. We will fight to make America great again, won't we? Well, I gotta say this too. Bob and I sure appreciate your prayers for us and our whole family. And please continue to pray. Appreciate that. And had a verse on my mind. Sometimes as you pray, something comes to you. But one is, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Have you ever prayed that one before? We probably all have at different times. But I am certainly listening. I appreciate your prayers. I'd ask you to pray for all of us, our family, but also pray for our staff and our supporters and everybody who helps us out. We appreciate your prayers a whole lot. It means a lot to us. And you know, we've got a fight ahead of us, don't we? But we are ready. We are ready. And please know this, you'll always have my gratitude, but you're always going to have an ally when it comes to me. And I will stand for freedom. I will fight for Iowa. And we will fight alongside each other as we work to make America great again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's kind. Thank you. I've got somebody really special here I want you to hear from, as a good friend of mine. So I get to introduce somebody, believe it or not. And somebody very special came all the way from what I would have called the state of Kentucky, but they call it a commonwealth. They do things a little different. But Daniel Cameron is here tonight, and he serves as the CEO of the 1792 Exchange. That is where he advocates for dismantling DEI in corporate America and having businesses focus on business, like producing great products, not pushing a woke agenda. And before Daniel had that important job, he was the 51st Attorney General in Kentucky, and he was the first Republican to hold that office since 1948. You know, think about that for a little bit. Yeah. And as Attorney General there in Kentucky, he stood strong. He was a strong bulwark against heavy-handed government, against government overreach, the EV mandates, pushing back on the Biden climate agenda, you name it, and he fought the fight. So let's give a warm Iowa welcome to my friend, Daniel Cameron.
Well, thank you, Iowa. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I mean, as someone who is a politician, you got to be excited to say the words, "Hello, Iowa," and it feels good to be here tonight. I bring greetings from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, greetings from the home of the Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Kentucky Bluegrass. And it's often a refrain that someone will ask you, sort of, what do you have in common with Iowa? And I'll just say that I know you all grow a lot of corn here. We grow a lot of corn in Kentucky as well. I think that's something that we do mutually. The only difference is that some of our citizens then distill it and then they drink it. But in all seriousness, thank you all so much for giving me an opportunity to chat with you. And can we give it up again for your wonderful Attorney General, Brenna Bird? It goes without saying, but you all have one of the best attorney generals in the United States of America. And I know people have talked about this, but you really did get an upgrade when you booted out Tom Miller and put her in 2022. She brings good old-fashioned common sense values to the role, and just like she said, she is your voice in standing up for your constitutional rights, and she is a dear friend. God bless her, and God bless her work. I've had a couple of occasions to speak at these FF Coalition meetings, and I just want to say thank you to Steve Scheffler. Thank you to Steve, who gives without ceasing to the cause of freedom, to the cause of faith, and to the cause of ultimately family. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you to those that are in the room for standing with Steve, for standing for Christ principles, for first principles. Thank you for not only being willing to proclaim the name of Jesus Christ, but also to go out and tell others about it. A few of you might have heard that I announced for the Senate in Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. And selfishly, and I know we saw him on screen, but selfishly, I was kind of wanting Senator Ernst and Chairman Grassley to be here because I was going to ask them for an endorsement. But in all seriousness, I'm grateful for them because in Washington, D.C., they are pushing forward on the America First agenda for the American people. And I know we have Congresswoman Mace here who will speak to you all later, but Congresswoman, let me just say thank you for your support of women and standing up for the values of this country and supporting women at all times in the United States Congress. And I got to say, I'm sure you're glad to be out of the Beltway, because here in Iowa, they know who goes in what bathroom, and that's the end of that conversation. And if you don't mind, can we give it up for Chairman Whatley as well? I mean, in a short time with his leadership, we are well on our way to securing our elections, and that man helped President Donald J. Trump get back in the White House. Now, this is my first time in Iowa, and I am honored to be in this state as part of this Faith and Freedom Coalition meeting tonight. And I understand you do 2 of these in the year, and it is a delight to spend some time with you. I want to tell you, before I came here, I was actually with General Byrd in Houston. We had a conference for an association that we're a part of as Republicans. And at that conference, as I was flying out today, I had someone that drove me to the airport, and we got in a conversation about college basketball and NIL and a young nephew that he had that has an opportunity to play at the college level. But at some point during that conversation, it came up that both of us were believers. And he was excited to know that, and that deepened our conversation. And he said something to me that I thought timely and appropriate given that I would be here tonight. He said, "Man, I'm so glad," and he said this with all sincerity, he said, "I'm so glad we talked today, because there are typically 2 things you can't talk about, and that's politics and religion." And I looked at him and said, "Well, I get to talk about both of those things tonight in Iowa." And I don't know Chairman Kaufman, but I'll tell you, I was ready to run through that wall after he was talking. And I assure you, I imagine that even in a room this big, there's probably a couple of Democrats in the room. You don't have to raise your hand, that's okay. But what I want to say to you is, I am so proud to be a member of the Republican Party. I am proud to be a part of a party that embraces its Christian heritage. And again, I'm proud to be a part of a party that is not ashamed of the name of Jesus Christ. Now, this year marks the halfway point of the decade. And it can be argued that the first half of the decade was defined by the grievances of the radical left. Grievances that found fault with capitalism, grievances that found fault with our Christian values, and grievances that ultimately found fault with our founding. BLM, Joe Biden, and climate alarmists promised us better days if we just gave into their demands. Instead, what we got over the last several years was an idolatry that elevated identity and division over merit and unity, and left our country spiraling toward national decline. We lost trust in our institutions, our corporations were co-opted, and our culture corrupted. But this year ushers in a new chapter in the American experience, a chapter that promises hope, restores common sense, and renews a collective commitment to the American dream. Some might even call it a golden age. Consider what President Trump has done in the first 4 months of this term. Who could have predicted the speed with which this administration would have acted? Certainly not Ann Seltzer. President Trump has brought back the radical notion that an American president ought to be concerned about the plight of the American people. farmers in Iowa and in Kentucky can be comforted by the idea that you now have a president that elevates common sense and fair play over the status quo and the establishment in Washington, D.C. The best presidents have understood this. It was common sense and fair play that told Abraham Lincoln that to live up to this nation's founding, we had to abolish slavery. It was common sense and fair play that told Teddy Roosevelt that the financial health and interests of this nation couldn't just be held in the hands of a few. And it was common sense and fair play that told Ronald Reagan that we had to get the thumbs of the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. off the backs of the American people. Otherwise, we were going to lose the innovative entrepreneurial spirit of America. This is what Donald Trump has internalized over the course of his time as president, and that is what we have seen in his most recent term. And despite the doubters, despite the haters, the administration keeps notching win after win after win. Inflation is down. Illegal border crossings have plunged to their lowest rate in decades. We're deporting violent criminals like members of the gang MS-13. We're making sure to take care of the lives of the unborn. We are returning to the American people the idea that we can maintain and preserve and have our own energy in this country rather than get supplies from foreign adversaries. And it's crazy to even have to say it, but finally, the federal government is recognizing that there are only two genders, male and female. And they're removing DEI root and branch from our agencies. I say this all the time, that America doesn't need companies and agencies and a federal government built on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We need America built on merit, excellence, and intelligence. And perhaps most of all, and most important of all, the biggest change is in the American psyche. People walk a little taller. They're a little prouder of this nation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's simple. America, the United States of America, is back, and we are open and ready for business, and we are preserving the freedoms that all of us in this room care about. Now, we're approaching a midterms, obviously, and you've got to wonder what's the response been from the other side. You know, some rational actors would try to tack to the middle, find some common ground. But that's not today's Democratic Party. Instead, they are doubling down on the exact policies and ideas that lost them the election in November. They want more illegal immigrants coming into the country rather than fewer. They want more men playing in women's sports rather than fewer. They want a country that is led by AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Jasmine Crockett. And then as a new form of a campaign strategy, they're now burning and vandalizing Teslas. This is a recipe for disaster. And let me tell you what it's got them. It's got them a 27% favorability rating with the American people. Even within their own party, Democrats disapprove of congressional Democrats at a 49% rate. I'm telling you right now, if that's what they ultimately are going to do, Chairman Whatley, your folks here, Chairman Kaufman, you all are going to have a pretty good and easy job making sure that the Republicans stay in office in the midterms come 26. I come from Kentucky, and we hold in great and high esteem a frontiersman by the name of Daniel Boone. But I'm telling you right now, not even Daniel Boone could lead the Democratic Party out of the wilderness they're in at this juncture. So look, let's not miss this. Tonight is about a celebration. It's about recognizing the things that us as people of faith have seen come about in the last several months because we were committed to the cause of freedom. There is a season of renewal that is taking place in this country, but I want to also leave you with a cautionary note, one that says that we have to, at the end of the day, as Christians, understand that there has to be a continued sense of urgency. Tonight has to be a call to keep pushing, to keep striving, because we do know that 2026 is around the corner. The collective voice of Christianity is a vital element to the national dialogue in this country, and that should never change. Proclaiming that our hope is not built on man, but is secured through the blood of Jesus, gives us the freedom to be confident and speak boldly regardless of the situation. The 4 years of the Biden administration tested us, but as Christians, it did not break us. And so, as Paul writes in Romans, creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. As the children of God, of those of us that are in this room, we have an obligation to stand up and speak up for truth. And so what should our faith compel us to in the marketplace of ideas and as we approach the 26 midterms? I think it should compel us to be zealous advocates for free speech and a colorblind society. Free speech is an outward expression of freedom of conscience, which we are gifted with by God as an image bearer of Him. Those societies that are faltering right now and throughout history have done so because they've allowed regimes to fester that have disregarded that basic principle and tenet, that tenet of free speech. Here in America, we have got to remain on a path of freedom. But that path is only guaranteed by our vigilance and perseverance rather than indifference. We should be the fiercest defenders of free speech. As Christians whose faith flourishes when we speak truth over political correctness, we should see this as a cause worth pursuing. And while I'm on the subject of speech, let me say this as clearly as I can. To those who wish to stifle or muffle the voice of the brothers and sisters of the Jewish faith, we will support and defend their right to speak and to exist. My hope also is that we will embrace a colorblind society because we know ultimately that is what heaven will look like. The cult of the last 4 years elevated identity over national unity. They discounted patriotism as something of a bygone era. But the second part of this decade can be different. Most people yearn for leadership that sees us as Americans rather than racial subsets of a community to be looked at as oppressed and oppressor. My wife, Mackenzie, and I have 2 boys. Theodore is 3 and Bennett is 11 months. And as many of you know, with young kids, it's fun to watch them perceive and see things for the first time, and you want to live vicariously through them. And as part of our prayers every night, Mackenzie and I, when we pray with Theodore, we say, Lord, We want to be your ambassadors to Theodore so that one day he will make the decision to be a follower of you, and that he will understand that the relationship comes from openly saying and willingly saying, Lord, I submit to you. We pray that with him every night. But what I also want him to understand as we are growing him and his brother Bennett is that anything is possible in this great country. And that if we elevate merit over division, if we elevate merit over diversity, equity, inclusion, that he can have and reach for anything that this country can offer. As part of our responsibility, we have the role of saying to Theodore that we, as Americans, have to together push back against the oppressive thinking of the left. That's what you and I in this room get to do. We have an opportunity over the course of the remainder of this decade to let our kids know and our grandkids know that we should judge people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. This is core to why I'm running for the Senate. I want to be a voice for common sense. I want to be a voice that supports President Trump's America First agenda. I want to be a voice for Christians. And with President Trump in office and with Christians willing to embrace our inheritance as defenders of the Constitution, we can look to the rest of this decade confidently and boldly. I'm in this fight with you. I appreciate you. May God bless you. God bless the United States, and may God bless this great state of Iowa. Thank you so much.
Steve, come on up here. Steve Scheffler, you've all heard of Steve Scheffler. We went through the precinct ranks of Polk County Republican politics for years and years. Steve never wavered. Sometimes just a few at meetings, then more, then many, then the National Republican Committee, and great leadership, Steve Scheffler.
Thanks, Kane. Well, good evening. I want to thank each and every single one of you in this room for what you've meant in my life and what you have done for this great organization with your financial resources, your volunteer resources. We couldn't do this alone, I guarantee you. And I want to thank those that were sponsors of this event and all those that you bought tickets. I want to thank all my board members, and I want to thank Heather and Diana, Jeff Pitts, Jeff Ortez, my wife, and John from the national organization. Without your help, this event and this great work would not go forward. So also I want to mention, I think John mentioned this, make sure you visit Joe and Dana Huss's Generous Joe's Coffee. They're two incredible Christian people who have done a lot of ministry and entrepreneurs and helping churches and schools to raise money. So say hello to them and buy some coffee. And I also want to mention that make sure you visit. There's a lot of great vendors back there. And one of them I just want to kind of give a shout out, not above every other one, but it's just one because it's something that's meant a lot to me. So has anybody in this room heard of the Founder's Bible? If you love this country, which I know you do, and if you love the Constitution like I do, and are interested in how we came to be such a great nation, you'll want to take a look back there. and take a look at that and maybe purchase one of those. If you're not, there's a lot of resources in there. It is a Bible, but it's had all this extra stuff in there, so please pay them a visit. So as John mentioned, I think you know what we do a great job here in Iowa, I think, and I'm not bragging, but I think without question, probably Faith and Freedom does more outreach to people right of center, conservative voters, than any other organization in the state of Iowa. But it wouldn't happen without your generous support. So those of you that had tickets bought for you, if you haven't made a contribution, want to put something in the bucket, that would be greatly appreciated, and we'll use our work, and it does stay here in Iowa. And if anybody wants to know, you can ask Jeff Pitts. I am a tightwad. We spend our money very conservatively, that we use our resources for a voter education program. We've made much progress in this state. A great governor we've got, Republican legislators. I've been around so long, I remember when Republican legislators in Iowa had to be babysat because they didn't do the right thing. I had some Republican legislators that represented my district that were big supporters of Planned Parenthood. Those days are gone. And so I would encourage you to thank those legislators when they do the right thing, which is 99% of the time, and pray for them because they catch a lot of criticism, a lot of heat. Look what happened here 2 weeks ago when your great legislators had to endure all this craziness from the leftists at the state capitol. And so we have a great state to live in. Thank God we don't live in states on the West Coast or the East Coast or Illinois. And as you know, we've got a great president. Tax cuts, getting rid of the new Green Deal, closed borders, justices on the Supreme Court, stronger military, standing for life, trying to put a stop to the transgender ideology, getting rid of DEI in universities. Let me just be abundantly clear and blunt. Legislators probably can't do this, but I can. In my view, Democrats that are elected to office today at the federal level or at the state legislative level are crazy, they are insane, and they embrace evil. This is the party of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, AOC, Congresswoman Crockett, Schumer, Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Omar, Tlaib, Elizabeth Warren, better known as Pocahontas, Shifty Schiff, Kamala Harris, and the list goes on and on. Congressman Mace, I don't know how you can even stand to be in that room and try to be polite with some of these crazy people. You remember what Schumer said before the election, that if they got complete control, they're going to get rid of the filibuster, and make no bones about it, the two Democrats that helped make sure the filibuster stayed in place, Sinema and Joe Manchin, are now gone. So they're all crazy, the Democrats that are there. They would have made Roe v. Wade the law of the land. H.R. 1, which means every state that had voter integrity laws on the books would have been declared null and void. D.C. would have become a state with 2 Democrat senators. Puerto Rico would have become a state with 2 Democrat senators. The Green New Deal would have got crazier than ever. Expanded the Supreme Court. Free speech would be gone, and in my view, this is one of the biggest issues out there. They want to shut down free speech. Open borders, and another one that's really dear to my heart is religious persecution. Betty Odegaard, where are you? She's a perfect example of had a business, and they refused to allow 2 people of the same sex to be married there, and because of her stance, she lost her business. Make no bones about it that if they have complete control and your church does not adhere to a woke ideology, they will shut you down. I guarantee you. But if your church is okay with a woke agenda, then you can thrive and go forward. And they certainly hate the nation of Israel, the Democrats. The list goes on and on. Make no bones about it. If these people ever have complete control again, we are headed straight down the tubes towards communism, pure and simple. We must never, never, ever, ever surrender to this radical, crazy, insane, anti-God, anti-Constitution ideology ever, ever, ever. And I know there are a few pastors here. Thank God for you. Maybe you'll stand. There's not a lot of you, but if you stand, we appreciate you and what you do. And if you happen to go to a church that, even if it's a Bible-believing church, a preaching church, but you got a wimpy pastor, and I'll just say it like it is, they're afraid of their own shadow, tell them to get out of that shell and start talking truth. So anyway, thank you for all you do. Thank you for your support of this organization. I love you, and please come back and help us thrive even more. So thank you so much. Jeff Pitts, are you in the room? So at this point, I want to introduce Jeff Pitts. A lot of you have gotten to know him. Jeff Pitts is our Director of Legislative Affairs. I love politics. I eat it, I sleep it, the whole 9 yards. But being a lobbyist would be not my cup of tea, because my patience runs about this thick with people that don't get it. But he's done a phenomenal job, and he's given Faith and Freedom Coalition a great name up on the Hill. And a year ago, last December, we took a leap of faith, and again, you know what a tightwad I am. We put him on staff on full time, and I've never regretted a single day. He's tenacious, he's hardworking, he's a man of God, and like this last week, I couldn't have done it without him. And so, you know, I'm going to be involved in this to the day I die, hopefully. But as Ralph Reed said about 5 years ago, I'm on his national board. He said, "Steve, do you have a succession plan?" I said, "Are you telling me I'm old or I should get out of the way?" He said, "No, but someday, you know, you're not going to live forever." So the plan down the road is I'll be around forever and ever and be at these events, and hopefully Jeff will let me speak. But this is kind of what I envision the succession plan. So Jeff is a great guy. I couldn't do without him. So give him a warm welcome, please.
Parlor tricks. Who wants me to show you a new one? That's not what you expected me to lead with, was it? I'm Jeff Pitts. I have about 3 minutes, so I'm going to fly through this, and it's going to be good. In a survey of 5,000 trained biologists from academic institutions around the globe, 96% of them, virtually all of them, said that according, from the perspective of biology, from the standard measures of biology, human life begins at conception, fertilization. Now, if this spiel sounds familiar, it's because I said something similar a few months ago behind this same podium, or similar podium. In fact, it's basically what I say if someone puts me behind a podium. But tonight, I'm going to go off script. I want to do something a little different and experiment. I want to start a new parlor game that we can all play with our friends, our family, social gatherings, church socials, you name it. Everyone do me a favor, and this breaks every rule of public speaking. But if you have a phone handy, grab it. Pull up Google. Pull up Google. And Google, ask Google, according to biology, because here's the deal, even though I say that about the survey of the 5,000 biologists, and people go, yeah, sure, whatever, and they keep, who's this guy, and what's he talking about? That's not what people really think, right? Ask Google, according to biology, when does a human life begin? According to biology, when does human life begin? Now, I'm not going to wait for every single person to get through this exercise. Do it at home or whatnot, or do it here and talk to me later. But more than likely, if your Google machine is anything like mine, even Google admits something like this. According to biology, this is what it said last time I punched it in. It might be slightly different. According to biology, a human life begins at fertilization when a sperm and an egg fuse to form a single-celled zygote, which possesses the complete genetic blueprint for a new individual. That's the undisputed truth according to biology, and that's not just me saying it. It's almost every biologist on planet Earth, and even the almighty, magnificent, great Mr. Google. So that's a great exercise next time you're in a group of people, because let's face it, some of you, a lot of this crowd already knows that truth, but my guess is you didn't learn it in school. And a lot of you didn't know this, and if you did, pat yourself on the back, and you had a great teacher and a great school system. But if you didn't, please ask yourself, how? How did you get through school? And no one shared the most basic truth in biology. And after you get done contemplating how, ask yourself why. Why did no one share that with you? There's been a massive dereliction of duty in our schools. Iowa's been teaching human growth and development for a generation or two, maybe longer, only to emerge with a population that is largely ignorant to when, according to biology and science, human life begins. And if you don't believe me, just ask people on the street. They will not say what I'm saying right now. Iowa Faith and Freedom, along with many of our pro-life leaders, many of them are here, I see them all around the room, and our pro-life legislators, the best ones are here tonight. Right now we're pushing at the Capitol for Baby Olivia, what's commonly known as the Baby Olivia bill. It's also known as the Unborn Biology bill, that's what I call it, fetal development bill. If passed, the new law would insist that when an Iowa school teaches human growth and development, you gotta start at the beginning. They gotta start at the beginning. They gotta teach what happens during the whole 9 months, including the beginning. They gotta include a 3-minute video showing them the development from stage to stage, and a 3-minute ultrasound in high def. Again, this is human growth and development. This shouldn't be controversial. How else could you teach human growth and development? How else would you want to teach it without starting at the beginning? Think about it. What's the harm in Iowa schools teaching the bare basics, the truth about human biology? What's the downside? Okay. Now there's lots of other news tidbits going on at the Capitol. Usually this is the time of year when I share the legislative update. Truth is, we're doing the event a little bit earlier this year. There's still a lot to go. There's lots of good things happening, hopefully, still on the move. But before I get off stage here, I want to make sure to talk about the greatest achievement of this year's legislative session, more than likely, is already in the books. We owe our Iowa legislators, and again, the ones here are the ones that we owe the biggest thanks to. We owe them a large debt of gratitude for their courage this year as they removed the great gender identity fiction from the state civil rights code. Thank you, legislators. Thank you for standing strong for women. Thank you for standing up for girls. And maybe most of all, thank you for literally laying down the law in defense of what's real. The truth still matters, at least in Iowa. Thank you. Thank you. And please pass the Baby Olivia bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Doing a great job. So at this time, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, Michael Whatley, the chairman of the Republican National Committee. It's a tough job. You're dealing with 168 people from 50 states and 6 territories who have different personalities. Hopefully, most of us don't complain too much, but this is a man that Donald Trump wanted as the RNC chair. And when the President of the United States speaks, we listen pretty carefully. And after the great victory on November 5th, he wanted him there at the helm again. It's a tough job. It's a tough job on his family, traveling the country, raising money, talking to the press, not putting his foot in his mouth. But he's become a good friend. He's become a good mentor. I couldn't think of anybody better to be at the helm than Michael Whatley. He hails from the great state of North Carolina, an attorney, and I think one of the big reasons that Donald Trump picked him to begin with, because some of his forte was getting to the bottom of voter fraud. So without any further ado, Michael Whatley, the great Republican National Committee chairman.
Well, God bless Iowa. It is great to be here again, and it's really nice that it's not 30 below zero this time. You know, there was a Thursday night during the campaign. There was a Thursday where I was in Milwaukee getting prepared for the convention, and at 6 a.m., I got on a flight and headed to Phoenix. President Trump got on a flight at 6 a.m. from Palm Beach. I got there a little bit before him, waited for his plane to land, joined him in the motorcade, and off we went to a rally. We spoke at the rally, we got back in the motorcade, back to the airport, and flew up to San Francisco. We had an hour and 20-minute motorcade to get to a fundraiser where we raised a record-setting $12 million for his campaign among the tech titans in that area. After 2.5 hours at that dinner, we got back in the motorcade, an hour and 20 minutes up to the airport, and we were flying down to Los Angeles. It was 12:30 Pacific time, which meant it was 3:30 a.m. Eastern time, and President Trump had been on that plane for 21 and a half hours. And he looked over at me and he said, "Hey, Michael, pretty cool, huh?" Yes, sir, pretty cool. You know, there's so many stories to talk about that campaign cycle that I swear if I write a book, the title's going to be pretty cool. Because it's pretty cool that we have a president who won in 2016, who came back in the greatest political comeback in history in 2024. It's pretty cool that we have a president who led the way in winning all 7 battleground states, who won the popular vote, who led the ticket to ensure that we're going to have a Republican House and a Republican Senate. Pretty cool indeed. But you think about back a few years, 10 years ago, in fact, the first time he came down that escalator in Trump Tower and shocked the world by saying that he was going to make America great again. And he had a fairly simple formula for it. We're going to rebuild our economy. We're going to restore the southern border. We're going to keep our communities safe, and we are going to make sure that America is strong enough to protect our interests and our allies around the world. Here we are 10 years later, 3 election cycles. And what is President Trump doing every single day? He is restoring our economy. He has already restored the southern border. He is keeping our communities safe, and he is making sure that the world knows that we are indeed strong enough to protect our interests and allies around the world. Every single person that he has selected onto his cabinet, every single person that he has put onto his staff at the White House, every executive action, every executive order, every single day, this is what he is doing. Promises made, promises kept is absolutely the law of the land when it comes to President Trump and his administration. And it's essential for us to do it. When you think about where this country was just 75 days ago, with open borders, inflationary spending, wasteful spending coming out of the government like we never, ever would have imagined, where we were kowtowing to world leaders all across the stage. We were so weak that Russia invaded Ukraine. We were so weak and didn't stand up with Israel that Iran not only attacked them through proxies, but actually attacked them directly. We were so weak that President Biden invited, encouraged, and even flew 10, 12, 15 million illegal immigrants across our southern border. You look at the change that we've underseen already. It is staggering in its scope, and it's staggering in its efficiency. This is what the American people wanted. This is what the American people voted for, and this is what Donald Trump is going to deliver. Pretty cool. Now, I want to give some thanks out tonight, and I'll start with our great chairman here in Iowa, Jeff Kaufman. You know, it's not a coincidence that when I sat down with President Trump to go through planning on the convention, that when we talked about who we wanted to nominate him, that we both immediately said, I think Jeff Kaufman would be pretty good. Jeff was pretty good, and he is a leader amongst the RNC. I also want to thank Brenna Bird, who oversaw the vote count at the convention as one of the convention co-chairs. She did an absolutely fantastic job making sure that convention went off without a hitch. I want to thank Tamara Scott, the National Committee woman from Iowa, who basically runs our faith-based outreach organization within the RNC. Every single week on Tuesday or Wednesdays, we have our prayer call, and I got to tell you, I do not miss it. It is a bedrock part of my conversation with God every week, and Tamara, thank you so much for continuing your leadership in the RNC on that. And I want to thank Stephen, who along with Ralph Reed provides such a benefit, not just for the Republican Party, but for the country as a whole, with the work that Faith and Freedom Coalition does. It is tireless, it is thankless, it is difficult, and it is absolutely necessary. Stephen, thank you so much for your leadership here. You know, when we think about faith and freedom, it's a great slogan. It's a great logo. It's a great name for an organization. But I think it really hits where we are here in Iowa. You know, 2 of the faith leaders for the entire RNC, for the entire Republican Party across the country, are right here on the National Committee from Iowa. That matters a lot. This is the first in the nation state. This is the state that sent a signal. Sent a signal in 2016, sent a signal in 2020, and by God, it sent a signal here in 2024 that Donald Trump is going to be our president. You know, as I was flying out here, I was thinking, okay, it's Palm Sunday weekend. Can I make sure that I get back to Charlotte in time tomorrow morning to go ahead and hit Mass? But as you're going through the process of Lent, for those of you who do it, it's a time of reflection. It's a time of thought. And it's a time where you really have to step back and think about what matters and what's important. You know, as a leader in the Republican Party, I can tell you I fight every single day for the values that you all share with me, for the values that we need in America. And I want to make sure that we have Republican Party is always going to stand up for those important values. It's not just about the president. It's not just about the Supreme Court, as important as they are. But it's about county commissions. It's about city councils. It's about mayors. And most importantly, in my mind, it's about school boards. We need men and women of faith to stand up and run for these offices, and we need men and women of faith to be there in our communities at every single level. Now, am I happy that we have a president who's a man of faith? You bet. Did it matter to me in 2015 when I got a call from Trump Tower saying we want you to run North Carolina for President Trump, that I knew he's a man of faith? Yes, it did. Does it matter that we have 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court? Absolutely, it does. Look at the decision, look at the ruling that we got on Roe v. Wade and Dobbs, and the fact that the federal government is no longer going to protect abortion, is no longer going to fight for abortion the way that they have. They have returned it to the states where it absolutely belongs. It matters that you have a governor who is a woman of faith, and it will be important for you to select another governor who is a man or woman of faith. We have got to make sure at every step that the Republican Party is going to be true to our founding and is going to be true to our faith. As sure as there will be prayer in school as long as they have tests, I can assure you the Republican Party will be the party of faith as long as I am the chair. But elections have consequences. So it's really important that the Faith and Freedom Coalition has worked with us all across the country in all of our battleground states to win the election. It's really important that we have other groups that are on the ground fighting for us as well. And with this election, with Donald Trump in office, we know that there are certain bedrock truths that we're going to deal with. The federal government is not going to support abortion. It is not going to fund abortion, and it is not going to use taxpayer funds to fund abortion overseas in any way. This administration is going to fight every day for religious freedoms. And we are not going to force small businesses to cater to communities and clienteles that they don't want to cater to. It's very important for us. We are not going to allow boys and women's sports, and we are not going to allow men's and women's locker rooms. And we are going to stand with Israel. We had a lot of discussion over the course of the summer as we wrote a new platform for the convention, and we wanted to tighten it up, but there were certain givens that were going to be there. The fact is that the Republican Party is always going to stand for pro-life. We are always going to stand for women's rights and girls' rights. We are always going to stand for religious freedom, and we're always going to back Israel. It's absolutely essential for us. There's one last note I want to make before I turn this over to Nancy. And I certainly do want to thank Representative Mace as well as Representative Meeks for being here tonight. And you can rest assured that they're doing a great job on the wall fighting for you in Congress every single day where we absolutely need them to be. I'm very proud of the fact that during the course of that election, the day that I got in to the RNC, I threw out hundreds of millions of dollars worth of programs that they had done. We fired staff, we realigned the RNC, and we merged with President Trump's campaign. I'm very proud of the fact that as one singular entity, we focused on two things to win that election: getting out the vote and protecting the ballot. I'm very proud of the fact that we retooled all of our grassroots program to focus on low propensity voters, which was a big shock to the system. I'm very proud of the fact that we built the first ever national election integrity program, where we did things like make sure we had the right rules of the road in place before voting started, where we had people in the room, 230,000 volunteers, 6,500 attorneys that were in every single precinct and every single battleground to make sure that we were going to catch cheating on the front end and be able to eliminate it right there on the spot. I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to talk about that from one end of the country to the other. But don't think for a second that those efforts are why Donald Trump is in the White House today. Donald Trump hit every mark. Donald Trump did everything that he needed to do. Donald Trump went downtown Detroit, downtown Milwaukee, downtown Philadelphia. He went to the Bronx. He went to Atlanta. He campaigned 3 times as hard as Kamala Harris. He was on Seth Rogen. He was on Elon Musk. He was doing the podcast. He was winning the debates. He hit every single mark he needed to hit. But don't think for a second that's why he's in the White House today. He is in the White House today because your God and my God and his God saved his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. And preserve that life so that he could fight for America every single day. And I can tell you, I have known President Trump for a long time. He is a changed man today. Because when you go through what he went through, when you survive the way he survived, you have to take a step back and you have to reflect. You have to reflect on the fact that Corey Compatore did not survive that shooting, that others were injured, that a country was traumatized. You have to reflect on why did you survive and what are you going to do with the opportunity that you have. I will never forget being backstage with him on that Monday of that convention, right before we were going to make a surprise showing on the floor of the convention. And nobody knew he was in the building. And I said, sir, when you walk out this door, this place is going to melt. And they did. And he melted. And he knows how much the people of this party and the people of this country love him. And you could feel it. So I'm extremely proud that he asked me to stay on at the RNC. It was actually a pretty funny conversation. He called me up Thursday after the election. He said, Michael, I'm sitting here with the great Laura Trump, and we just wanted to tell you how much we love you. Thank you so much for what you did. Thank you so much for helping us. You can have any job you want. Any job. You want to be an ambassador? Tell me where you want to go. You want to be in the cabinet? You just think about it. You call me, let me know. But you're going to stay at the RNC, right? Say, yes, sir, we will figure it out. And the reason that I decided to stay, besides the fact I didn't have a choice, is because this midterm election cycle is truly going to matter. This midterm election cycle is going to determine whether we have a 4-year presidency or a 2-year presidency.